I forgot to press record. Right. So it is true. E-testing allows students to practice useful skills for the future. So we are living in a digital world, right? We have online banking. We have paying bills online. We are, I mean, practically every and anything you can do online. We shop online. Netflix is a company that they don't have an office. They work online, right? A lot of those taxi companies in the States and so on, Uber, there's no office. It's an online company. The world is digital. Whether we like it or not, that's the direction that our children are going to be living in. And so e-testing allows students to practice useful skills, and it's not just an assessment, but they learn things like, because when you are talking about e-test, you have to talk to them about security. You have to talk to them about cheating. You have to talk to them about, because, for example, many of us now know we can do online courses, right? If you are a university student, I mean, and you go and you plagiarize, you take something that's not yours and you put it in, right? There's no second chance. There's you fail. So we have to start talking to our students about things like that so they understand that it's not just about cheating, but the repercussions that come with it. There are several sites. If you go and you just Google, you can find SPAs, you can download essays, you can download people are doing your work for you. And I'm talking about international. We have to start having these conversations because these things are going to be useful when the students get older. They have to be able to navigate that. You can't just go and take somebody's work and put your name on it. Or you can't just go and take change two words in it and say it's yours, right? So we have to start having those conversations, and all those things help in terms of setting the context for e-testing. So it's not just about going online and putting a test, right? So why are we here? Well, we want to recognize the benefits of e-testing, and I'm going to talk through this a little quickly because I actually want us to get into the practical aspect of Goformative. And we want to learn strategies to prepare students to be ready for online tests. And of course, be able to navigate Goformative as an e-assessment tool. And whenever I say e, that's just electronic. So electronic, online, etc. And of course, if you have a question or comment, feel free to stop me. So let's talk about what is an e-assessment. So the JISC defines it as an end-to-end electronic assessment processes where ICT is used for the presentation of assessment activity and the recording of responses. So basically, if I'm using any digital tool, whether it is a laptop, phone, tablet, different types of software, an online site, once I'm using that to assess a skill, so it can be a test as we know it, multiple choice, or it can be an oral exam, or it can be a project, digital portfolios, etc. All of those would fall under an e-assessment. And Pompey, who was a former blogger for CSEC, defined it as electronic testing, also referred to as computer-based testing, is a test conducted using a personal computer or an equivalent electronic device. So basically the same thing. So once you hear e-assessment, e-testing, online testing, just think a device is involved and it's going to be used to assess the students in some way. So what are some of the major benefits of e-testing? So before I show you, can anybody just tell me very quickly what we can think of in terms of major benefits of e-testing? And you all can go ahead and unmute because I can't see you all because of my presentation.
The ease of grading.
Ease of grading, right? What else? Somebody else was going to say something. That's it?
It's also easy to acquire data from the test, like, you know, to get information about students' performance, areas of weakness, strength, so on.
Yes, data analysis.
It's also very easy if you have to give a makeup assessment. Scheduling is very simple.
Very simple to reschedule a test. It also helps in terms of, what else? Building your bank, right? Because of course, if it's online, it means it's easier to just copy and paste as opposed to if it's paper. And you see this one? This one is a big one for me. It provides greater accessibility for special needs candidates. When we have online testing, we have the ability to make something as simple as for students who are visually impaired. The students can adapt their test to suit their needs, so it can be made bigger. If we have students who have issues in terms of auditory, we can actually allow for the script to be read to them, and I'm going to show you some of these features. And so the test can be adaptable for many students because it's online. So this one is like a huge one for me because I've always found it strange that, you know, like I know for SEA and so on, they actually have to bring in readers for students, when if they just gave them the laptop, they can actually do it for themselves. Students who have fine motor skills, who have issues writing, you know, they might be able to type or be able to even record their responses and let it type it out for them. So this one is like a huge one for me. And I can see if we take e-testing seriously in the country, it will definitely help in terms of our special needs candidates. And this is another one. Of course, environmental benefits, less paper. And we know teachers are like major culprits with using paper because we print all the time, right? And of course, I mean, in terms of environmental benefits, less paper usage, but also saving in terms of money because, you know, printing is expensive and we have it to be reused from year to year because sometimes we print a test, we find one error on it, we're not able to reuse it for next year, or we give the students to write on it. So there are some environmental benefits. And also, as we mentioned, there are students who will be able to apply those IT skills, which will be needed for future careers. And a big one is typing. When we start to prepare our students for e-tests, we will find that their typing skills will improve. I don't know about you all, but I have never taken a typing course, but I can type pretty fast. And I type pretty quickly because I've just been using it all the time. So I'm probably not typing as I should be typing, you know, with all the fingers in the right places, but I have learned to type. I've learned to maneuver my computer very quickly because I use it all the time. And what we're going to find is that once our students are on the computers, they are going to be able to navigate that environment very easily. So for example, I have an 8-year-old twin, and my daughter in particular, she really is into, like, since school has been closed, she has been using Google Slides. So she's been making all these wonderful Google Slides and putting her Bitmoji and so on, because she would have seen me doing it. And she asked me, Mommy, how do you do it? And then eventually she started doing it on her own. So she has created like several slides. She's gone onto Book Creator and she's been creating her own books. And this is with minimal guidance. And that's just because she was exposed to it, and then she would go on and she would play with it. And you would find a lot of students that age, they would adapt it very quickly because it's like something that they were born into, you know, it's nothing that they're afraid of. So once you expose them to things like that, you would find that they would jump in. All right. So questions, comments, or we're going good? So just for the CSEC teachers among us, and you all will get a copy of this after the session. CSEC actually has a whole lot of material about what is happening in terms of CSEC that you can share with parents as well eventually, and you can read up on as well. And they also have a video on how the CSEC platform actually works, which actually tells us about like the security measures and so on, and how the students would be doing the exam if we were to start e-testing. So you can also, I'm not going to play the video now just to save time, but I will also send this for you. So when we work smart, a lot of teachers tend to work very hard, but we need to work smart so that our work does not become more tedious than it should be. So a couple of things in terms of pointers. How do we prepare our students? So practical and authentic ways to prepare students for online testing. I'm just going to run through 10 very quick steps and then get into the Goformative. 1, embed online testing strategies as authentically as possible all year. So you know you're preparing them for a particular type of test. Don't wait until the test comes to prepare them for it. If you know you're going to be doing multiple choice tests, then use a platform like quizzes. to prepare them for being able to choose A, B, C, D, because we might take for granted that students know how to click. But remember, especially depending on the age, don't assume. Also, reading online and reading from a book, two different strategies, right? Not everybody reads very well from a screen. For example, even though I'm very much into tech, I still prefer to read. If I have to read for something, I still prefer to read hard copy. And that's probably just because I'm older and I'm more accustomed reading from my book, and I like to underline and highlight from my books, right? But we need to actually give them tests that look like what they're going to get if it becomes an end of term assessment, etc. So we want to make sure to actually give them practice in it. Do not let it be a surprise that the first time they're seeing an e-test is an end of term examination or something that really counts. Do not do the students that, please, or that they walk into CSEC for the first time, or they walk into, you know, some environment for the first time and they're seeing this e-test. Even the brightest student can get thrown off their game. So please remember, start off small. So if you want to introduce them to 5 questions, do that. If you want to do an oral assessment using something like Flipgrid, then introduce them to it as a practice first. Other tools, right? So of course, these are a whole host of tools, and we're not talking about this today, but I still wanted to mention them, all right? That you allow multiple opportunities to practice in similar formats. And I know a lot of you already use quizzes, but there are others such as Quizlet, Kahoots, Quizalize, Socrative, right? So you can go ahead and check those out. The other thing, embed computer-based practice in regular instruction. And I guess now we have no other choice because we are online. And so when they say embed computer-based practice in regular instruction, while you are teaching, don't wait for it to necessarily be a formative assessment or even summative assessment, but while you're teaching, give them a poll that pops up and they just have to click, or give them a little, send them to a little website where they have to scroll up and down to read a passage so that they get accustomed, or send them to a site where you ask them to read the instructions, because we know students don't like to read instructions generally, but even online, we have to teach them how to read instructions online. So whether it is they use their cursor to kind of follow the words, because some of them are not accustomed, that's just like they would use their finger in their reading books. Or if we want to highlight, we can show them how to highlight on a Word document so that they practice their reading. So in your regular instruction, you use it so you can demo it for them and then let them use it. Integrate keyboarding practice in regular instruction all year. Students by now, whether you are 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, 15, 16, our students should be exposed to sending typewritten assessments by now. We have been home since March, and our students should be able to navigate to some extent, being able to type. But these 2 websites, this is actually a game, a typing game. And my children love it because it's a game, right? So they don't actually know they're practicing typing, they play a game. This one is actually a little more formal in terms of the typing club, but these are 2 websites, and again, you will get copies of it that you can use to help your students to practice typing. But all in addition to typing, give them little things that they have to send and type it for you, right? Rather than them always sending pictures of their writing, actually set it up in such a way that they type, all right? Next, implement computer-based guided reading. Oops, sorry. Implement computer-based guided reading and guided math to teach online test-taking strategies authentically. And that's basically where they are reading online and they're doing math online, because they need to get accustomed to being able to do the math and English online, right? Next, use online testing as often as possible to assess your students. And this is where we're heading into Goformative. So I will come back to that. Next, create online, well, we're gonna come to this. Next, teach your students the testing format and what types of questions to expect. This is really important. You need to know what the format of your exam is going to be. It doesn't only have to be multiple choice. It can be true, false. It can be short answers. It can be actually where you can type up an essay depending on how old the child is, right? Do not let your test be a surprise. Just like you would normally prepare your students for the paper-based format in terms of what it would look like, whether there are going to be 3 sections, if there's going to be a reading comprehension in there, if there is going to be a section with short answers versus an essay. Do not surprise your students because you think it's online. You can just send them something, prepare them for the types of questions. And this goes, if you go online, those of you who are teaching CSEC, I know I have some secondary school teachers, there are several demo e-tests already on, all right? Next, teach the tools and how to use them effectively. So for example, if you are a math teacher, there are several online math tools
I'm putting the bike inside, right?
use.
Yeah, but you're not using the bike?
So I'm just gonna ask everybody to mute.
Or you're using the bike?
1 second. Right, so let's get back. So we're gonna teach the tools and how to use them effectively. So for example, if you're a foreign language teacher, you need to teach your students how to type accents online. If you teach math, you need to be able to teach your students how to use the ruler online. If you are teaching science, for example, there are several virtual science labs that exist. You need to be able to teach them how to navigate that. Whatever it is, you need to be able to teach them. If you're a primary school teacher and you use tools like pennacool.com, you need to be able to teach them how to maneuver that. And that means you need to know how to use it as well. So model and practice reading directions and constructed response questions. Do not take it for granted that your students can read instructions. 1, and do not take it for granted that because they read instructions well on paper that they are necessarily going to translate that into online. All right, so when you send an online test, actually go through the instructions with them when you're doing the practice and model how you approach doing a test online. Because one of the downsides of doing a test online is that students try to finish quickly, especially the multiple choice. I don't know if any of you have had that experience where you've given a test online and the students just click, 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 click. And it's like, well, how you finish already? And of course, when you look at the marks, you can tell it's not done so well. Or you would have given another assessment like on an Ed puzzle and you saw they actually spent like 10 seconds on it for those of you who know Ed puzzle, because they can have the advantage of feeling, well, I can click and I submitted my homework, as opposed to you being in front of them where you can tell them, go and check it over because you're now online, right? So do practice this with them before you send the test. And the last thing, teach students to summarize passages and write the main idea after reading or take brief notes as they read. So one of the things about reading online, and this would be specifically to anybody who sends passages, is that you would find it is a little more difficult to read online and sometimes process the information. Well, for some people, and I'm talking about, I have had that experience. So we have to teach them how to summarize passages when they're online as well, when you give them things to read. So I know I've seen like literature teachers sending home PDF copies of books. It may be a little more difficult for them to read and process that information. So we have to also teach them how to kind of, when we read, we summarize in some way. Because remember, for example, with a literature teacher, you may have been making notes as a student in your physical book. But if you are now reading online, how do you now convert that to making notes? And of course, you can make notes online, but you have to be able to teach them, like, how do we now set up our notes? Because some of the students may be making notes in like a physical notebook, but then how do we actually relate it to what? So, you know, it may be something as simple as page number, theme, and they actually kind of lay it out. Don't take it for granted that they know how to do these things, right? So just bear that in mind. So any questions before we jump on to Goformative, or did anything spark any ideas? Did it make sense in terms of setting that context of how we prepare students for e-test and we don't just jump into doing an e-test? So listening, any quick thoughts? No quick thoughts? So do I need to call people? Let me see. Somebody saying they can't hear me. Is everybody hearing me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so if the person, oh, well, I guess if they can't hear me, I have to send them a message. So any quick thoughts about what I just said in terms of e-testing? Anybody? Amanda, Andrea, Candice, any quick thoughts?
So essentially, it's not just the test itself. You have to pay special attention to the instructions as well.
Yes.
In terms of how you formulate it online, because the instructions I gather should be a bit different to paper-based testing, in that it should be more succinct, shorter instructions, I suppose.
Yes, shorter instructions, also even how you set it out. So for example, I don't know how many of you actually pay attention to, like, if you ever see a written test from anybody, whether it's GCSE, whether it's CXE, but like the spacing in any passages, they are actually double spaced, and the font they use is a particular type of font. You notice they don't use fonts, for example, which are difficult to read. And that's for a reason. Even considering when you are, as you mentioned that, even considering things like there's a dyslexic font, for example, if you know you have students in your class who are dyslexic, there's actually a font called the dyslexic font that you can go look up, and you can type in that, or make sure to not use anything like script when you're sending home tests and so on. Don't also think about the colors that you're using. Avoid using like red, yellow against white. So just be careful, and in terms of when you are sending home your test, be very mindful of things like that. Make sure the script is not too jumbled on a page. Make sure when you are sending a test, it's very clear. So if you want them to underline, or if you want them to circle, or if you want them to choose one, versus if they have several options to choose, make sure your instructions are clear. And one of the easiest things is to just send it to a teacher and say, can you do this test and give me some feedback? All right, if you have a colleague that you can do that with. So we're going to jump right in to what Goformative is. So just a show of hands, how many of you have used Goformative before? Has anybody ever used Goformative before here? So Dave has. So I know one or two others have. Okay, so 2. All right, so not many people have used Goformative. All right, the good thing, the reason I like Goformative is because I find it to be very user-friendly, and the free version also allows for a lot to happen. Now, the paid version is very good as well because it gives you some extra options, but the free version is pretty good. So, and I know, you know, as teachers, we want free stuff, right? We don't want to have to pay a lot of money. So I'm just going to run through very quickly, and then we're actually going to do a practical example of how we use it. So Goformative, we're going to actually jump right in. I want everybody to go to, if you have a second device, it will be great. If not, you can go into a new tab, but you're going to go to goformative.com. and you're going to click on this join code. I'm going to actually paste the join code in. I'm actually going to paste the join code in the chat, so it's easy for you to be able to just copy and paste. So you're going to go to goformative.com. And the code is in the chat now. So if you have a second device, you can use a second device, or you can open it up on another tab. Okay, everybody's getting in? Right, so I'm seeing Candace is there, Giovanna is there, Cleopatra, Professor Howell, Nian, Roberto, Dave, Professor Gibbs, Celicia. So even if you don't get it right, it's fine, right? Just have some fun with it. So I'm gonna give us about maybe 7 minutes to play around with those questions, and then we will go through. And in the meantime, what I'm going to do, I'm going to share my screen for those of you who may not have a second device, just so you can see what it looks like. All right. So those of you who did not join, you would notice that I can actually see what my students are doing. I can actually see the progress in real time. And I will discuss this afterwards for those of you who are doing the test as well. And I can actually go to each question to see who's gotten it right or wrong, right? So 5 minutes. And I will leave the test open. So those of you who want to try it afterwards, you can save the code so that you can try it for yourselves to see how easy it is, because I didn't teach anybody here how to use it, and they are able to do it on their own. So in terms of your students, it's very simple, which is one of the reasons I really like it.
Hi, Leanne. I'm on the Goformative side, but I seem to be very dull. I can't find what we're supposed to be doing.
Did you join the code? When you go to goformative.com, are you seeing join code?
Join with code. Okay, all
yes,
right.
and type in the code there.
All right, cool. Thank you so much.
No problem. All right, so in 2 minutes, I'm going to stop us. And of course, we could always go back and finish the test and so on, but I just wanted everybody who is doing the test to be able to tell me how they felt just doing the test. So some quick feedback from Cleopatra. Cleopatra, can you unmute and tell us what you think in terms of how difficult you found it? Not having been told, I think.
I'm finding it okay. I actually did sign up for it before as a teacher, not as a student. So
right.
It's good to see what they are seeing. I haven't used it at all yet. I just signed up recently. So I was just looking at it because I heard about it. So it's interesting so far.
Good.
And easy to use.
Yes, very easy to use.
Yes.
What about Celicia? Celicia, what do you think?
It's going good, but I'm struggling to write the equation using fractions and to plot a line. On the phone, it's really hard to get to that point.
Right.
Because zoom in, it's just scratching all over the place. I run 5 minutes, but it's really cool.
Good. All right. So all of my students who are now doing their tests busily, we can stop. And I promise I will leave it open. I will leave it open so that you can finish it afterwards. So I want everybody to come back to the Zoom screen. So stop doing your test. You can leave the tab open, but come back to the Zoom screen so that you can follow with me. So let me talk about all the benefits of what you are seeing here. So let's start with the test itself. So as you can see, one of the reasons I really like Goformative is because, well, of course, it actually allows you to do different types of testing. it is an assessment platform. And so there are a variety of tests. So you would have, for example, the standard multiple choice, right? So you'd have the standard multiple choice where you can have a number of answers. And you will notice that you can randomize or show your work. Now, some of these features are the paid version, but as I mentioned, I will show you both what the free version offers and what the paid version offers. The free version actually does quite a lot. So you have the multiple choice. You also have the ability to show your work, and show your work allows your students to either do one of two things: write on a whiteboard, or they can actually snap a picture and upload. So in the test, you can either ask them to create work on a whiteboard, which it is embedded right in the question, or it allows you to snap a picture. You have the standard true or false. And this one, for any teacher that has any reading comprehension or anything like that, this one is like the best. You can upload a PDF, you can upload a picture, and you can put questions. So I could have added several questions here. And you notice it's a short answer as well. So if there's a short answer where it's specific answers, you can actually add that and it will self-correct as well. Now in the paid version, you can allow for a partial match. And so you have to decide whether you want to go with the free version or the paid version. The other thing that it can do is it allows for audio. I'm just going to stop sharing because I don't think I shared with sound. Oh, yes, I did. So it allows for audio. So for example, Pharaoh. So primary school, secondary school teachers, foreign language teachers, you can do listening exercises, you can do spelling exercises. And guess what? It can be self-correcting. So I just said, spell the word you just heard. And the word, of course, was Pharaoh. So your students would have to type that in and you get a spelling exercise. So you don't have to stop your spelling because you are now no longer in a physical space, right? So this is wonderful for many levels because you can have spelling for little ones, right? And remember, in terms of teaching them how to type, with this exercise, you can allow them to have some practice time and then you can.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Right. I like that spelling idea, but you said the word was Pharaoh. To be very honest, I thought the word was Pharaoh, you know.
Oh, well, I honestly, I did this just now. So you have to make sure, of course, your audio is the space is clear and so on. And you can always replace the audio if it's not. Right? So it allows you to replace your audio. This is me recording. So you can always, make sure the place is quiet. And of course, if your students are going to be doing something like this, it would be in our context. You'd probably have given them 10 spelling words to learn. And so you can also give them a sentence, right? The Pharaoh who ruled Egypt, so that you can get a hint as well, right? So spell Pharaoh. So this one for math teachers and maybe some of the science teachers, this actually allows you to have all of those wonderful fractions and symbols that you need. You can actually set your test with it, but your students also have the option of this. It's a whole math thing that comes up and you can actually change. So you have a whole math keyboard here. So this allows you to set tests in math very easily, as well as your students to be able to do the test and actually type it using the symbols rather than having to copy and paste. So for math teachers, this is something that you would enjoy. You also have the option in the paid version though, that the students can give an audio response. So for French and Spanish teachers, it is something to consider because you can do orals with it, that you can ask them a question, just like what we just heard, and they respond using their voice. And then you also have a couple other things like resequencing and more. You can write a whole essay, etc. So let's talk about, yes?
Excuse.
Mm-hmm.
I was wondering for language teachers as well, when students have to input their written answers,
Yes.
what about accents and so on? Is it easy to input on the student's end?
You would actually have to show them how to use the keyboard for that, like using the old codes.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, it doesn't have the actual accents on it, unfortunately. But one of the things that I have discovered with Goformative is on their forum, when teachers send in feedback, they actually do listen. So if enough teachers send in feedback and say, we really want this, they will actually try to do it. It's a lot of young people that actually created this site, and they tend to listen a lot to what teachers require. So let's talk about what it does. You can set classes, right? So you can actually create classes. There's a tracker, which actually tells you about the data. So let me just show you all, for example. So I'm not making out anybody, right? So pretend you're not seeing any names here. So these are my student results, right? This is what you all just did. It can tell you which questions were well done. So for example, number 1, most people knew the answer. So it gives me immediate feedback. It tells me that, there was a little problem with question 4, so I probably need to review question 4. And the other thing that it allows is that I can actually go into the questions, and it will give me information about that particular student and that question. Now, for example, if it's a short answer, but sometimes students may spell a word incorrectly, etc., and I wanted to give them a point. Let's say, for example, I can't remember which one was the short answer. I think was right. So number 4 was the short answer, right? So the answer was envelope. So if, let's say, somebody spelled envelope incorrectly, let's say Dave had spelled envelope without the E, but I don't actually want to give him 0 because he would have gotten 0 if he had spelled it incorrect. I can actually go in here and I could give them half a mark. So I can actually override the auto grade, which is really useful as a teacher, being able to go and actually mark each question. Like, just look it over for your peace of mind that you can override the auto grade system. So even let's say you made a mistake as a teacher. Let's say in the multiple choice, you sent it home, and only after the students did the test, you realize that there was an error in the multiple choice, like what you put as the answer. You can actually go into the system after the students have done the test, and you can override it by changing the response, and it will auto-correct the students. So there are a lot of features in terms of how you can use Goformative. So what we're going to do now, I am going to show you the paid version of Goformative, but I'm actually going to show you also the free version of Goformative and what it can do. So this is the paid version of Goformative, and I'm just going to show you a very quick demo because, of course, I want you to be able to actually go on and do it as well. So to start, you click, after you've signed up as a teacher, you click New Formative, and that is your test. So this is your test. You put your title here. So I'm just going to put demo test, and it auto saves. So you don't need to remember to save anything because it auto saves. This little blue button here that jumps up and down, this is your best friend in Goformative, right? So when you click on this, this tells you all the stuff that you can do in Goformative. This is the paid version. I will show you what the free version does as well, and how it can be very useful as well. So the paid version allows you to add audio. It allows you to embed stuff from outside, images, text blocks, videos, whiteboard, audio response. These are the types of questions, right? So audio response, categorize, essays, graphing, so math teachers, matching, multiple choice, multiple selection, numeric, resequence, right? So, I mean, basically any kind of test that you can think of, it exists. So in terms of setting a test, I'm just going to show you a very basic one. So in terms of setting instructions, you would want to start with your text block. So your text block would be where you set instructions. So I'm going to just type Instructions. Read carefully. If somebody could just read out what's happening in the chat, because I for some reason I can't see the chat. If there are any questions. All right, so instructions, read carefully. And if I wanted, I could also put a little image in my instructions, right? So if I wanted to put an image, because it's a chemistry test and I'm going to talk about something in chemistry and I want to put a little photo there, I can also do that. And then I want to start with my questions. So let's look at multiple choice. I want a multiple choice question. So it comes up here. My question can include an image, right? So this is really great for like foreign language teachers who have that first part of their section with images, or any subject that may have an image and then ask questions. You can have an image, you can have audio, right? You can have, for the math teachers, the same, what I just showed you. You can even have a video and have questions based on that video. So I'm just gonna do something really simple, right? So 1 + 1. And then I want to type my options. So my options are 1, my options are 2, 3, and 4. And the correct answer is 2. So I just put a little tick there, and that's it. So I'm going to show you another type of question. So I want to add a question that has, let's do a multiple choice again, but this time my multiple choice is an audio question. So it literally is very simple. I click record. Hello, what is your name? I stop recording. It uploads. I can check it. Hello, what is your name? If I like how it sounds, I keep it. So I add audio. If I don't like how it sounds, I replace the audio and it gets me to record again. So I add the audio. And then, well, I can ask them what it means, etc. So I can put my different options here. All right. I can also have short answers. So a short answer question would be, so we're keeping it simple, right? What is 1 + 1? And my answer, I want to type a correct answer. So students can either put 2 or they can put 2 and they would get it correct. And is it case sensitive? No, because if they put TWO in all caps, I want them to get it correct. If they put T in caps and then WO in lowercase, I also want them to get it correct. So I'm not going to put it as case sensitive. So case sensitive would be probably like where you have specific symbols that are always supposed to be in capitals, otherwise it's incorrect. I'm thinking possibly like the periodic table and things like that. Those would be where you use like case sensitive stuff for. All right, and of course you can continue just exploring the questions. Now very easily, the good thing about Goformative is that it works well, whether it is on a cell phone, it adapts. So that's one of the pluses. So the students, it will adapt automatically. So they'll be able to see the entire screen, whether they're on a phone or tablet or laptop. And I have done tests with my students where they're using phones and it works fine. And to assign this test, you can do 2 things. If you have a class, which is what I would suggest, because if you're going to be using Goformative, you should have it set it up as a class. So let's say I add a class and my class is demo class. And I'm just going to put it as DC and you can select your grade, right? And you can pick your subject. So I'm going to have a chemistry class and I'm going to have it lime green. And if it's like for younger students, you can actually create their own, you can create what their usernames are. But if it's for older students that you know you can do the same join code with what I just did with you, you can go ahead and just give them, tell them go to goformative.com, join, and give them the code and they join. And when they type in their names, they would be asked for passwords, etc. Now, the good thing about Goformative is that even if your students forget their password, as the teacher, you have the ability to reset their password, because you know students tend to forget how to enter, so they would have to have a email, etc. But if your students are younger students, you might want to use this option where you add students. You can add your students from an Excel sheet, or you can add them literally manually by typing in their names, etc., and giving them a password. So in the case for younger students, you might want to have like a standard password, like password 1 or something like that. For older students, you can definitely let them create their own passwords. But in the case of them forgetting their password, you can go in and reset it and give them new passwords. Questions? Let me see if I can get into the chat. So somebody said, Goformative will identify pasted content, however, tricky to determine between pasting an accent or an answer from a translator. Yes, that is true. So that is always like, you know, the downside of things. But if you teach your students, if you are really concerned about that, just teach them how to use the alt codes. It's not that difficult to use the alt codes. It's just a matter of remembering how to do it. So I would actually just spend some time, probably get a little video for them and show them how to use the alt codes to enter their accents to avoid that. Is there Google Classroom integration? Yes. So when you click assign, right? So let's go to the demo class. When I click assign, right, you would see login at goformative.com, click demo test. I can assign as a link. So if let's say you're using Edmodo or using Microsoft Teams, you can assign it as a link. But if you use Google Classroom, you can also assign it directly to Google Classroom. Or you can embed it in a website or anywhere. So you have multiple ways to share your Goformative. I think I got all the questions. So if not, you can always ask me. All right, so we probably want to know, well, this is the paid version. So I could just show you what the plan looks like in terms of the settings, right? So basically, hold on. It's $12 a month if you pay yearly and $15 if you pay per month, right? So that's the plan. So let me show you what the free version allows. So the free version is actually pretty good as well. So for the free version, what you do get, I'm just going to go into new formative and I'm going to add my title. The free version allows you to do embed, image, text block, video, whiteboard. So you would notice for foreign language teachers, we can't do audio direct. However, you can embed sound like from SoundCloud. So if you are familiar with SoundCloud, it takes a little more work, but you can record your questions in SoundCloud and then embed it into Goformative. So that's a workaround. If you don't want to pay for the version, right? You can embed sound. And then for the questions, you are a little more limited, but it certainly allows to like multiple choice, multiple selection, short answers, which most teachers use, and the essay writing, show your work true or false. So in terms of the question types, the math teachers don't have as many options for the free version, but certainly there are enough options that work for us. And one of the other things that I really want to show you is they actually have a question bank. Now, you can have a question bank from your own formative. So for example, I have, of course, tests that I would have used with my students. And I can actually pull questions from different tests. So just like what CXE does, right? CXE has a bank of questions. You have, as you build your formatives, you build a bank, and then I could mix and match so that I don't have to start from scratch every time. I can actually pull questions from different tests that I would have set. But there's also a library. And there's a library of over 500 formatives done by other teachers already that you can search, and you can actually take their questions as well. So there are several questions already set here. So you'd see some math. If I were to search for Spanish, there's some Spanish here, right? So you can look for it. Maybe if we look for, let's see, primary school. I don't know if I search for that. Yeah, well, I mean, may have to look for something specific for primary school. All right, but you can go on and check it. So like, for example, you would see there's a little story right here. Questions that somebody would have set. There is a characterization. So somebody sets a characterization test that you may want to use. And you don't have to take the entire test. You can actually take parts of it because it's set up in such a way that you can take parts, right? As opposed to having to take the entire test if you don't want it. So the free version works just as well. And it covers most of your needs. The other thing that really works very well in terms of Goformative is that you can share with your teacher. So if I create a test and somebody else uses Goformative, I can actually give them a clone of my test and they can use it with their class. And then they can give me a clone of their test and you can use it with your class. And the one other thing that I would talk about, because there are many other features that I haven't even begun to touch on, but the one other thing that I really like about Goformative is that they give you a 30-day free trial. And that 30-day free trial allows you to have access to all of their tools. And even when the trial is finished, if you feel that you don't want to continue with it, your tests are saved. So if you use audio during that time, the test is saved. It's not like it stops working or anything like that. So what I normally recommend to teachers is when you're going to start the trial, use your 30 days wisely. Like get a space where you actually know you have time to kind of convert all of your tests to online tests and sit and do it so that you have as many features as possible that you can use from the site. So I'm going to stop now for questions and comments. So listening. Do you think it's something that you can use? Do you think it is easy to use based on what I've shown you? Is it something that you think you would like to implement with your students? One of the other things, by the way, that I didn't show you is that you can open and close your test. So you do have the ability to open and close your test. That's in the free version. You can open and close your test. So if you open it at 1 o'clock and you do a test where your students are actually online, and you can close it at 1:20 if you wanted a 20-minute test. In the paid version, you can actually set a timer where the test cuts off at a particular time. So you can set a timer and the students go on, they have to go on between 1 and 1:30, and the test will open and close for itself. That's in the paid version. In the free version, you have to do it manually. The other thing that I really like about Goformative is if the internet drops while the student is doing the test, once they are logged in into their accounts, it saves the progress. And so all they have to do is go back on and it will start back wherever they left off. So they don't have to worry about, well, oh my gosh, my internet dropped. So what's going to happen? Am I going to have to restart the test? No, you won't. Once you're logged into your account, you do have the ability to go back. And you can actually see as the teacher where they are live. So you can actually track what they're doing. So, you know, if you see students leaving out like a whole set of questions in a multiple choice, you can remind them. Students, remember, don't leave out any questions. Go back and check your work before you submit, etc. So I'm seeing some hands raised. So Sandra, do you have a question?
No, I think I forgot to lower my hand from before, but I do have a comment.
Yes.
From using Goformative in the past, I really do like it. There was a situation where an assessment had been given, but there was an error in the answer key. And I was able to correct the error in the answer key, and it just updated everybody's mark without me having to go back and remark. So it's a very useful feature to, you know, when it is, things can go wrong.
Thank you very much for that. Maurice, you have a question or comment?
No question. It's going to be something that I'll have to practice using because I'm quite slow with the tech. You know, I'm not at all a digital native. But I find I believe it's quite similar to the Google, what Google allows.
So the Google Forms does have a lot of capacity, but it will not give you as much features as Goformative. In terms of the range of question types, and also for like reading comprehensions, it does not allow you to have that scrollability where you can have let me actually show you what I'm referring to, where you can actually have a question you have several questions based on one passage. So let me see if I can find one very quickly to show you what I'm referring to. And then the other thing with Google Forms, there are a lot of workarounds to actually cheat on Google Forms that students would have discovered. I don't know how many of you saw that, but there are actually a lot of ways to cheat on Google Forms. So it's something that you have to consider. I'm not saying, you know, throw away Google Forms, but in terms of like if you want to test a more accurate test environment, it's something that I would suggest you try out. And you don't have to try it out now. Try it out when you have time to practice with it. Right? Cleopatra, you had a question. I will bring it while I will look for what I'm talking about while I answer your question.
I was going to actually ask you what was the benefit of using Goformative versus Google Forms, because I use Google Forms. I mean, it's the easiest thing right now to use. Right. So, but that was the same question as Maurice.
Let me share, and you can tell me. So, I'm a foreign language teacher, right? So, you know these passages that students get in the test and like reading comprehension questions? If you notice, I actually have the questions that slide up and down right next to it. So instead of having to put the question below, I can actually just put the questions right next to it, and I can actually upload PDFs and pictures and have the questions right next to it. So I don't know that Google Forms allows for these types of questions in terms of easily. I know you can upload pictures and so on, but I don't know if it allows for these types of questions that easily. So, I mean, at the end of the day, it is what you are comfortable with. But in terms of an assessment tool, especially for my CSEC students, this one is the closest to what CSEC, if you go on the CSEC demo sites, this will give them the closest version to that. So, as I said, it's an option. So it's just something to play with and see if you like it or not. So I don't know if anybody has any other questions, comments. Primary school teachers, do you see it as something that you can use in your classroom? Anybody is thinking about going to use it?
I think that scrolling feature that you just showed, like with the questions, I think that's an excellent feature. But definitely it's going to be something that I'll have to, you know, play around with a little bit in order to get comfortable with, as you say, you know, because we're accustomed to the Google right now. So, you know, but I think it's definitely something that's worthwhile looking at.
I think, you know, one of the reasons that I like Goformative, it's very easy to use. It's very intuitive. So when you go onto it, just by pressing that little plus sign, it tends to give you a lot of information. And because they're already Goformative set, you can actually take other people's tests and edit. So it does provide a lot of information. Then the data is right there as well. So you can get in, you know, immediate data. You get data based on questions. You get data based on which students are doing well, which question was difficult, which questions were answered correctly. You know, so it does allow for a lot of things. I'm not saying that Google Classroom, Google Forms is a bad alternative, but there are some downsides to Google Forms that if you have some tech savvy students, they will be able to work around and find out the answers. So, and like for foreign language teachers, Google Forms tends to give you Google Translate options also. So your students can easily convert a Spanish or French exercise into an English exercise and do it, where this will not give you that option. So, yes?
Okay, and what about the difference between quizzes and Goformative? I know with quizzes you can add audio as well and images and so on. So what's the difference between the both?
So for quizzes, there is one I love quizzes, by the way. Quizzes is really good for practice, but let me tell you what happened with recently with quizzes. Quizzes is not private. So we've introduced our students to quizzes, almost all the teachers use it. And one of our Form 1s, when we had an upcoming test, he went and he Googled, he went into quizzes and he looked for the topic. And guess what? He found our test and he did it for practice. So the next day when I gave the test, he said, but miss, I did this test already, you know, and of course he announced it to the whole class. Quizzes is not private, so that's one. So if you're using quizzes with your students and you're going to use it as a test, it is very easy for your students to go and find the test beforehand. Whereas with Goformative, it is going to be private. Also with quizzes, once you set the test, if the students do it, you do not have that ability to go back and edit the answers. You will actually have to go in and manually do it. So quizzes is ideal as a practice, but I would be careful if I'm doing it as a summative test. So something to consider. So I hope that answers your question. So it's really good to use for gaming. And then the other thing with quizzes, because students use it for games a lot, when it comes to sometimes using it as a test, they apply the same thing. So they can try to finish first and things like that. So just be mindful of if you're using it in terms of a test that you, one, allow them where they have to sign in to do it as a test and you remove like all the game features, the memes and so on, so that it actually feels like a test. But be mindful that students can find your test because it's not private. Anybody could find your test on quizzes. It's a public forum. Vicky, you had a question?
Hi, no, it was more of a comment that having used Goformative for a while, I think one of the features that is really beneficial is actually when you get the student results, all the different ways you can do your analysis. And for those of us in institutions that demand that kind of analysis in terms of which questions students got wrong, the overall percentage, you know, it really gives you those stats. I mean, I have the paid version, so I don't know if it will be the same for the free, but if you know that you have to do like those stats and you have to kind of give feedback, it gives you a very clear view of the questions that students had difficulty with. So you could work on those questions. And if you have to prepare those kind of reports, it really cuts down the number of the amount of time that you have to spend preparing it with Goformative. And definitely, I feel like it is one of the sites when compared to quizzes, etc., that you are still very much in control. You are still very much in control of when people access your tests. You're in control how long they access it for, who you share it with, etc. And those are certain privacy features, particularly when we talk about, you know, trying to keep that intellectual copyright, etc. These are things you have a greater level of control with when you use Goformative.
And just to touch on what Vicky said, so the difference between the free version and the paid version in terms of data collection, the free version, you have it for 2 weeks. So 2 weeks after your test, you have the same data, you just can download it as an Excel file. So it will disappear after 2 weeks on the actual Goformative site, but you can download it as an Excel sheet so you can get all the data, which of course you can then upload into any reporting system that you may have online. The paid version just allows it to stay there forever. So that's the difference in terms of the data between the paid and the free version. As I said, the free version is pretty good. And what I like is that they allow you to do that 30-day trial, and you can actually get to save your test during that 30-day trial. So if you already have tests, that's easy to just copy and paste or upload and fix your questions on. You get it and you can keep it. So as I said, there's nothing to lose, but if we are going to do a test that is similar to an end of year test, I would definitely not use quizzes as an end of year test. Quizzes is really good for gaming and formative assessments, but not necessarily, I would say, summative assessments for the reasons mentioned before. And you can go check it. You can Google, you can actually look up anybody's quizzes. It's not private. So your students can as well. So that's basically it. And we have one more thing. So as a way of saying thank you so I'm thanking everybody for coming, right? I'm very happy to see all of you, but we do have our subscription members. So our subscription members will get an opportunity to win a premium subscription to Goformative for 1 year, and that gives you access to full features. And so our premium, everybody can do it, but our premium persons will be getting a chance to do that, as well as our subscription members will also get a certificate coming directly from Goformative. All right, so I will send out that information to our subscription members, but I would like to thank all those of you who joined us and encourage everyone to continue following 21st Century Educators. And we are not just about educating in terms of our minds, but we want to encourage you to keep fit. So we will have our fitness session tomorrow at 5:30. So those of you who can join us, please join us in our journey to getting healthy so that we can provide the best for our students. And of course, look out for more professional development as we go through the year. So I would like to take the opportunity to say thank you. The subscription members, or if anybody has any final comments before I talk to my subscription members, any final comments? I do hope it was beneficial. Even if not that you're not going to use Goformative, I would still suggest try it out, but just start thinking about how do we prepare our students for e-testing. So I don't know if anybody has any comments, questions before I chat with my subscription members. If I could do a session on Peer Deck and Nearpod, we did do a session on Nearpod last year. So you see, you all have to make sure to follow us. So we did a session on Nearpod already, and our members would have gotten a session. But I can look at Peer Deck. And of course, yes, you all can send us emails as well in terms of what sessions you all are interested in, right? Anything that you all can think of. Even if I'm not doing it, we do look for persons who are professionals in that arena to come and assist. So thank you very much for the feedback. And I mean, everybody can do it. I'm going to do a very quick quizzes, right? But only our subscription members can win. So if you want, and of course, yes, it is on Goformative. So the person that comes first wins the premium session. So I'm sharing it, and everybody else, if you want to stay and have some fun, that's fine as well. But this is the win. So go ahead and click and have fun. And I will let you all know who the winner is. So this one is, thank you very much for the feedback. I'm always interested in getting your feedback. So those of you who are subscription members, go ahead and join. And if you are not a subscription member and you want to play, that's also fine. But please note the prize can only go to a subscription member, right? So let's see. So I'm still waiting. I'm not seeing some of my subscription members participating. Is it that you all don't want the premium, or should I go ahead and go and start with the persons who are on? Oh, I'm still waiting. I'm still hearing some people coming up. So Luan, Janelle, Dave, Candice, Vicky, Sonja, Anthony. And I don't know if I missed anybody else. So I'm going to start it. You can always join on. Go. Okay, so let's see who won. So Janelle, congratulations. Janelle won. So Janelle, I'm going to chat with you. Congratulations, Janelle, and everybody else for playing. So thank you very much. And I will see you all. So look out for more from 21st Century Educators. Bye. Oh, by the way, I will send out a PDF of what I did today to all those who were registered. So you can look out for that in the mail, and I will send any additional information as well. So, bye, everybody. You're welcome. Have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.